Well, for more on the story, let's speak to our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you, Doug. We saw satellite images this week on Wednesday and Thursday that showed there are more troops, more equipment amassing on 3 of Ukraine's borders, and still the Kremlin says it's doing nothing provocative.
Yeah, this has been called by some the denial of reality approach. How can, on the one hand, as you say, these satellite images show, and not just in the past couple of days or weeks, this has been really happening over months, the massive building up of Russian military troops, military hardware, both to the north of Ukraine, in Russia itself, in Belarus, where there are exercises right now, to the east of Ukraine, along Russia's border with Ukraine itself, up to 100,000 plus troops there, in the south, in annexed Crimea, which has been Russian territory by Russia's decree since 2014. On the one hand, you see those images. On the other hand, you have the Kremlin, and you have both Vladimir Putin and his right-hand man, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, with a completely deadpan, with a straight face, saying we are doing absolutely nothing provocative. If anything, it is NATO, it is the West that are being the provocateurs in this conflict. It seems to fly in the face factually with reality. And yet the Russians really do have a conviction of that what they are saying is actually the case in point. They do not see themselves as the provocateur. They do not see any contradiction or any flouting of international norms or laws with the fact that they are massing these troops, as they repeatedly remind the West, on Russian territory. It doesn't matter that those troops happen to be within a stone's throw of Ukraine. All of those troops are on Russian territory, and they time and again will repeat that claim. Look, Russia has been very good at saying one thing that sort of contradicts the reality, as you can see it plainly with your own eyes. It denied, you'll remember in the very beginning, before annexing Crimea, the lead up to that was these little green men, which they weren't Russians, they weren't Russian military, they weren't Russian soldiers, just the little green men they were called. And what happened next? Well, what happened next was Crimea was annexed. Russia has never officially acknowledged that it is militarily involved or that its military is backing the separatists in eastern Ukraine. So officially, that is just sort of a spontaneous conflict by these pro-Russian separatists that has been simmering on and off at varying levels of intensity for the past 7-8 years now. But no, Russia has not been backing them. Russia's not militarily involved there. But even beyond just that region itself, look at the U.S. elections. Russia has deadpan, same tone with a straight face, denied, scoffed at, dismissed as absolute lunacy on anyone who makes the accusations that it ever interfered in the 2016 U.S. elections, scoffed at similar claims by Emmanuel Macron regarding his own election back in 2017. Denial of reality. That is the reality on the ground, plainly as you can see, plainly as those satellite images show it on the one hand. And on the other hand, Russia's diplomatic quarters, the leadership of Russia saying with a straight face, and perhaps actually believing it, because they really are in their own information bubble, in their own bubble, their own sort of hermetically sealed worldview, where they do have a conviction that right is on their side, wrong is on the West side. Once again, neither side are angels in this conflict, and this is not to absolve NATO. NATO, in its own way, you can also argue, has had no shortage of provocations here and has perhaps been insensitive at times to Russia. But the fact of the reality is, you can't deny that Russia's denial of reality and the actual situation on the ground is what it is. And when Russia says that it is not the provocateur in this in any way, shape, or form, it's a little rich, even if you are of a disposition to give Russia the benefit of the doubt.
So that a little bit of a portrait of what's on the ground. What about the bargaining table? We've seen a flurry of diplomatic activity this week and in recent weeks as well.
Yeah, what's the diplomatic? Is there any diplomatic game in town left? Very thin on the ground. We saw Joe Biden there in full-fledged, U.S. alarmist mode. I mean, going over the top. You can analyze as much as you want. What is the strategy there? Is the strategy to, by throwing out these worst-case, dire doomsday scenarios as what might happen. Russia's about to invade. Perhaps you cut Russia off at the turn. You prevent them from doing these things by just putting it out there. Is that the strategy? Or is it really that they are also, the U.S. locked in its own worldview, where Russia is right now, and Vladimir Putin is evil incarnate, and he really does have evil intentions, and this is what he's planning to do. The U.S., let's note, has not said that officially they don't believe Putin has necessarily made a decision yet on whether to to invade or not. The Ukrainians themselves don't believe he's going to invade. They believe it's more psychological warfare. But what's clear is that the diplomatic, it's night and day, diplomatically speaking. Biden is out there on the alarmist fringe. You have Ukraine trying to still get anyone to calm down, soothe the tensions out there. You have the Foreign Secretary of Britain who met with Lavrov. Talk about not a meeting of the minds. I just want you to hear what Lavrov had to say about that meeting. Liz Truss and Sergei Lavrov.
Разочарован тем, что разговор немого с глухим у нас получается. Вроде бы слушаем, но не слышим.
Absolutely not. I mean, Lavrov is shocked, not just disappointed, he's shocked at what he sees as the ignorance and the lack of preparedness of Liz Truss, who he said was just basically reading from a briefing sheet, bunch of talking points. He said he learned nothing more from her in their private conversations yesterday in Moscow than he did in anything that's been said up until now, just in the press, by the public, and everything he knew already. So that is a big, big, big gap between Britain and Russia right now. The only game in town is Macron still there. He was there earlier this week in Moscow, then in Kiev. They're still talking. He's going to talk to Vladimir Putin again. At least those lines of communications are open. But you see the giant gulf. It's not a gap. It's a giant gulf between the worldviews, which have basically led to a complete stalemate in any hope of diplomacy to this point.
Yeah, and that impasse looks like it's set to continue for a moment at least. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you very much, Doug. Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator.